Hello, friends, and welcome to the Way Home Crossnore Communities for Children's Facebook Live show, as well as our podcast. My name is Holly Kessler, and I am the Senior Director of Community Relations at Crossnore. We are here every Tuesday afternoon getting to talk with one or two of our staff members or some community partners about the work that we do here at Crossnore. Sometimes we talk about the child welfare system or ways that we are engaging in our community. And so if you miss our show live on Tuesdays, you can always rewatch on our Facebook page or catch the show on our YouTube channel. The podcast comes out on Fridays on our blog at crossnore.org. So there are plenty of ways to watch our show each week. Today, my guest is Shana Heilbron. Shana is a new employee at Crossnore, and she is the Executive Director of the Triad region. She's going to tell us more about the work that she is doing. And so join me today in welcoming Shana to the show. Hello, friend.
Hello, Holly. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. It's a rainy day here in Winston-Salem today, so I'm glad to have a chance to be inside and chatting with you.
Me as well.
Well, start out by introducing yourself to us. Like I mentioned, you are new to Crossnore. It's been a month?
Almost 2.
Almost 2 months.
Almost 2. Time flies.
It sure does. But tell us about your role at Crossnore and, anything that you want to share about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. So as you mentioned, I am the Executive Director of the Triad region. So I am solely focused here on the campus in Winston-Salem, but building relationships across the region. I am thrilled to be part of the external relations team, and I get to do a little bit of everything every day. That includes a lot of fundraising, community relationship building, partnerships, you name it. If it's happening here in Winston or the Triad, I'm probably involved.
That is true. That is true. If it's happening in Winston, Shana is there. I'm always amazed, Shana, when we go to events at how many people you actually know.
Well, Winston has been a wonderful place to come to. I've been here for almost 7 years, and I have found very quickly it's an incredibly philanthropic community and supportive community. So I do enjoy a good event.
Yeah. Well, why don't you start out by reminding us what the mission of Crossnore is?
Sure. So here at Crossnore, we're a sanctuary of hope and healing for children and families in the child welfare system here in North Carolina.
Great. And when you came to Crossnore, was this your first opportunity to work in a trauma-informed organization?
It has been, and I have really been thrilled to participate in a lot of the trainings and understanding what that means. And I think for me, what has sort of most grabbed me is the way it's all part of a system. And it's working around sort of shared knowledge and language, commitment, shared practice, and culture is at the core of that. So as an entire organization, we're embedding and embodying those components that creates a really strong system to support children and families.
I think that when I came to Crossnore, it was my first introduction to trauma-informed care. And of course, that was longer than 2 months ago. So it is interesting at how much more there is in our culture now in terms of the recognition of trauma, being able to provide trauma-informed care. And I often say about Crossnore that we're not perfect because, we're made up of imperfect people. And so we're not a perfect organization and never will be. But I do feel like by and large, we're a healthy organization because of our trauma-informed model. And that gives us like you said, the shared language, values, commitments to actually work together.
Yeah. And it's all of us. I think that everyone, one of the things I learned very quickly is that every single person on this campus or our other locations has been trained in some sort of trauma-informed, strengths-based work. And that is what allows us, I think, to help support the students we're working with who have experienced oftentimes significant childhood trauma. And so whether you're talking to me in an administrative role or our maintenance team out on our 200 acres here in Winston, everyone has that similar sort of messaging and training to be able to to at least direct, a child or a family in the right way. And
Yeah, I mean, that's a really
right.
good point, Shana, that not only is the model, um, for the clients, the children and families that
Mhm.
we serve, but we train everybody in our organization. So, top to bottom, left to right, everybody is trained in it. And it's often interesting, for those of us that aren't in direct care and we don't get to
Mhm.
spend a lot of time with the kids, but when we do get to spend time with them and we do get to know them
Yeah.
and they recognize in us that same trauma informed approach,
Right.
it's interesting how children will, sometimes tell somebody something that maybe they wouldn't tell their therapist, and
Right.
maybe it's the man from facilities that's been in and out of their cottage, several
Mhm.
times, and or it's one of the ladies that work in the cafeteria and serve them
Right.
food, or so it is a really interesting model, and for
Mhm.
all of us to be involved in it makes a big
Yeah.
difference.
That was a big part for me, and I was fortunate to go through a more intensive 3-day training with our team on the Center for Trauma Resilient Communities, and
Mhm.
really sort of break down some of my own personal um, elements and aspects. But I think what struck me most during that time was really a switch in perspective. So instead of thinking about what's wrong with me, what's wrong with you,
Mhm.
we're working towards what's happened to you. So
Mhm.
ultimately, it's what's strong in you. That was a really powerful sort
Yeah.
of paradigm shift for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. That it's good to hear that that's still so
Mhm.
powerful, because it was for me too.
Yeah.
I just never thought about, being sort of a product of the things that had happened to me in my
Right.
life. And the
Right.
reality is that we've all experienced, at least some level of trauma in our life.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it is absolutely eye opening. And I appreciate what you said, that reminder of moving from
Mhm.
what's wrong with you to what's happened to you, and then really moving into what is
Mhm.
strong in you.
Yeah. It's really
Um,
powerful.
it is really powerful, and I love that we recognize that. I know sometimes in our community meetings, we'll use that question,
Mhm.
what is strong in you, and give people
Yeah.
the opportunity to say, today I feel strong here,
Right.
And so,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it's a
I
great.
think one of the pieces I didn't mention at the top of the sort of what are my roles and what are my pieces is that one of my immediate activities or tasks that I've been given right away is to work on our state application for a new
Yeah.
trauma informed school on this Winston-Salem campus. And these things that we've just talked about are truly going to be at the core of what we're going to do in that school setting. And I think we're in the early phases and early stages of the application, but in working with our whole team at Crossnore and what works best and what research has shown that trauma-informed schoolwork can provide is going to be really significant and going to be a game changer in this community. So I'm excited to be working on that. I know there's not been a ton of
Yeah.
talk yet.
No,
So,
but in the places where we have mentioned it, or people have asked sometimes, because they know that we
mhm,
have a charter school on our Avery campus up in the
yeah.
mountains. And so folks have asked us, knowing that we have a school building here in Winston, what are the
Mhm.
plans for a school here? So tell us about that. It is really exciting to
Sure.
think about a new trauma informed school here, right here in Winston-Salem.
It is, and you're absolutely right. Williams Academy in on our Avery campus has been really successful. So the opportunity to replicate what we're doing there here in Winston is really our plan. So quick timeline, related things. I'll be applying, putting together the formal application. Everyone loves a little good government writing in early 2023. So that'll probably close around April. And we hope to hear from the state by October of next year so that we can really get going and open our doors to students in August of 2024. And I can share with you that our goal is over 5 years is to build up to full capacity, which we expect to be around 100 students in a K through 8 environment.
Wow.
We may launch a second phase down the road where we add a high school, but right now we're really focused on K-8, and it's going to be a really exciting combination in terms of enrollment of children we have living here in our residential foster care program at Crossnore, and also opening it up to community. And I think that's really important, is how we can create an environment that is really built towards the child that needs our services most, but can be available to all children.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that around opening up to the, as a charter school, then we certainly will have some spaces available for community students. So
Mhm.
why would a student that's not in residential foster care choose to come to, we don't even have a name for it yet.
We
So
don't.
a trauma informed school, why would someone choose to put their child here?
Sure. I think there's a lot of reasons. Some of the immediate ones, we're going to have really small class sizes.
Hmm.
Like I said, our full capacity for K-8 will be around 100 students. So just much more of that one-on-one support
Hmm.
when it's needed. We will offer all of our therapeutic services as
Hmm.
well. So all our therapists on campus here in Winston will serve our school students throughout the day. We're also going to be incorporating our experiential learning programming.
Oh, wow.
So in addition, children maybe in a more traditional elementary school might go to their physical education classes in a gymnasium. Our students might go out on our ropes course and work with our team, on the high
Hmm.
ropes or low ropes, and do some very intentional team building as part of that time.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's a lot that we're going to be able to offer
Hmm.
because we're going to be running the show. I think the training around the trauma informed piece is going to be hugely helpful for our teachers and staff.
Hmm.
Again, that's something we're doing a lot of work in the community right now to train um, in the school system and in other nonprofit organizations. But I think we're going to find some very significant intentionality in the work we're doing and the curriculum we provide.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I know one of the things that I have seen at Williams Academy when I first came to Crossnore, I worked in the residential program, and with the small class sizes, with the trauma informed care, with some of the flexibility that we
Mhm.
have in educating through a charter school.
Mhm.
One of the things that we were able to do for our residential foster care students is a lot of times when they come into care, they're behind. They're
Right.
behind their same age peers. And so
Mhm.
oftentimes, if they're with us for a while, we're able to catch them back up
Mhm.
through the school, and help them get caught back up to their same age peers. So that's an advantage too, even for a community student maybe that is struggling in the traditional school setting, and
Mhm.
maybe falling behind. This might be a way to help catch up.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I do think research has shown that at least 2 years behind
Hmm.
is the sort of average case.
Yep.
Um, and again, being able to sort of extend the school day, particularly for those in our residential program. If
Hmm.
you're living here on campus, you're going to school on campus, you're playing, out of school time looks really differently. And I think for both community and our residential programming, we're going to really rely on our community partnerships that we've been working hard to build. And that's another, big task that I've taken on is how are we working with our neighbors and other
Yep.
organizations doing great work in this community?
Yeah, I want to ask you one more question about the school, and then I do want to
Yeah.
move on to community partnerships. So, a lot of folks know that here in Winston, we do have our own school building, but what's being done with those buildings to prepare for the opening, like you said, hopefully in the fall
Yeah.
of 2024?
August 2024 will come very fast.
Yes.
But we do have two current spaces that have been used as schools in the past that have undergone some renovation in the last year. But we still have work to do. We are working to raise money to complete those renovations within the next, we really want to have all that work done at least 6 months prior to opening
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
students. But we have been thrilled with what renovations have been done so far. Again, there's still work to do. I'd say we're maybe 60% there.
Oh,
So
cool.
over the next 6 to 8 months, the continued construction and upfitting is important, because the other side with this renovation opportunity, we're going to create a state-of-the-art environment. We're going to have
Mhm.
a math and science lab. We want to have literacy labs. We want the best of the technology, so that it's a space that we're all really proud of.
Yeah, that will be exciting to see. I haven't been in the school buildings in a while, so I didn't know we
Yeah,
were 60%, kind of through that process. So I can't wait to see them.
it's a
Um,
guesstimate number, we'll say.
well, yeah.
Some buildings might feel more like 50, others maybe 70. But
Yeah. Well, you mentioned community partnerships. So I did want
yeah,
us to talk about that. That's a big, obviously a big part of your job. It's
huge.
part of
Yep.
my job as well. So it's something you and I talk about a lot. Why do you think community partnerships are important in any community, but especially in this Triad region?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest across, I worked in many nonprofits across this area, but also other parts of the country. And no organization could or should operate in a bubble. The
Hmm.
strengths in particular here in the Triad is that historically we've been much stronger when we talk about bringing real change and moving the needle on issues that don't change overnight. We have to do it together. I think the work is really about sort of shared learning through re-energizing and reconnecting to ourselves and each other and the work. Um,
Hmm.
and sometimes the way we learn is just as important as what we're learning. So doing it together just makes sense. And we
Yeah,
have
it
a
does.
very strong community of nonprofits here.
We do in Winston, and like you said, coming together really just makes sense.
Mhm.
But there's a part of this trauma informed work
Yes.
that sort of elevates those partnerships. Talk about that
Mhm.
a little bit. What does that mean?
Absolutely. I think I mentioned it at the beginning, but I think as a community, similarly, starting with that shared knowledge
Hmm.
has been a huge benefit. So,
Hmm.
you know better than anyone in the work you do in communications that words really matter.
Yeah.
And when we're all getting started with sort of that same foundational knowledge, we can build up from there.
Yeah.
Um, and that's meant with this trauma informed work in particular, that has meant sort of resilience building, really keying in on equity and justice, understanding adverse childhood experiences, what organizational chronic stress looks like, the science behind trauma. We can never forget about science. Our
Right.
brains are very powerful tools.
Hmm.
Um, and
Hmm.
also that compassion fatigue that can sometimes happen. So doing that work together, and particularly through the facilitation of our Center for Trauma Resilient Communities has let us do that.
Yeah. And so Crossnore Center for Trauma Resilient Communities has been
Mhm.
working in the Triad over the last couple of years and has really put together a group of folks that I know you
Mhm.
have been interacting with, community partners for change. And so
Yeah.
tell us about that group, what you're learning from those community
Mhm.
partners, and how you guys are working towards this trauma informed community.
Sure. So it's, as you mentioned, the work started a couple years ago. We were very Crossnore was awarded a grant from the KB Reynolds Trust that the center, as we call it around here, has really led the effort in facilitating conversation around a trauma informed community. And I have been able to step in as a participant in this group. So it's kind of cool to be on both sides, that
Mm-hmm.
our agency is doing both sides of the work. But what the center has done over the last 3-ish years is really bring together representatives from communities and organizations, nonprofit organizations across Winston-Salem. Right now, it has really been focused on Winston. And we're doing the work. They're going through the training. We sort of come together once a month right now around different sort of topics and moving the needle, again, all tied to trauma resilient communities. But I'm right there at the table trying to figure out answers with my peers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, that's everyone from sort of the smaller grassroots organizations working in our community up to some of the larger organizations that that are often around the table. But I think this collaborative effort has been different than others I've been involved in.
Mhm.
And again, it goes back to that collective understanding about what it means to be trauma informed. And this group, again, I've been a part of it for 2 months now, but they've been doing significant work. They really started at a place of let's create sort of a shared vision.
Mhm.
Let's look at the research. Let's build that shared knowledge together. And let's create some community-based opportunities for engagement and learning. And all of that sort of led up at maybe the end of earlier this year into a strategic plan, which is
Mhm.
continuing to guide the work.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the group coming together
Mhm.
and creating their own shared vision. I mean, I think it
Yeah.
would be easy for our center or for even Crossnore to come in and say,
Mhm.
this is what y'all ought to do. But
Right.
instead, with your involvement, we're at the table
Mhm.
as an equal partner with these
Yeah.
other organizations and helping to create that vision
Mhm.
from really from a community-wide perspective, not just from the
Yes.
lens of what Crossnore can see.
Right. Absolutely. And having such a variety of voices in the room has given us great perspective. Just to shout out some of the key agencies that have been involved. Action for Equity has played a huge role. We've relied on Foresight Futures for some significant data information. Imprints Cares, who's really in the early education space and out of school
Mhm.
time space. The parenting path as well. It's been a really good mix of voices so that everyone is having the opportunity to be heard. And what this really does is it sort of breaks down those silos that maybe
Mhm.
previously existed. So
Mhm.
instead of having multiple small conversations, we're like, everyone, come on, let's go. You're
Yeah,
invited. If you're
yeah.
working in this community in some way, shape, or form towards a more trauma informed community, we want you to be engaged.
Yeah, and how do you feel like that will impact the work you're doing around the charter school?
It is going to be hugely important
Yeah.
because I'm going to go to this group as a participant and say, "Hey, can we, add something to the agenda that really looks at what would you want in a school as a member of the community? What would you say to encourage families you're working with,
Mhm.
to take a look at this opportunity and attend the school?" So. Not only is it a requirement that we have community engagement, which everything you do should have some level of community engagement, in my
Right, right.
humble opinion. But I think I'm really going to look to this group to help sort of build what that looks like and how we talk to families
Mhm.
and how we can continue to support. Again, I mentioned that sort of out of school time looks different
Yeah.
because our school day can will look very different. But how do
Mhm.
we engage those partners in the work in that way as well? So
Yeah.
they will be a strong team that I look to for advice, for thoughts, for feedback as we lay out our plans.
Well, that's excellent because it is going to be a big job for sure to get that application completed and get through the approval process. Well, Shana, it has been really exciting to hear about the work that you are doing here. I'll say welcome to Crossnore and
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing with us today about all the work that you are doing. But why don't you tell folks right before we end here, how can people find out more
Yeah.
about Crossnore and about the school? How can they support the effort? As you said, we're raising some money.
Yes,
So
we are.
how can
We are
folks
always
find out
raising
more?
money.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Holly. I really appreciate the time. So just stay tuned. Check out our website, www.crossnore.org, to learn more. We are going to be posting updates and information as we go through the process. And Holly, I'm going to rely on you and your team in that social media
Yep.
world to just help continue getting the message out. Um, but we're excited.
Yeah.
Big things in the next year, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I feel very lucky to have joined the Crossnore family almost 2 months ago.
Well, we are thrilled to have you with us. So thank you again for being a part of Crossnore and being a part of our show today.
Thank you.
Well, as I've thanked our guests for today, let me also say thanks to each of you who are watching or listening. We so appreciate the opportunity to tell you about Crossnore, the children and families that we serve, and the work that we're doing in our community. For more information, please visit our website at crossnore.org or follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. That's it for today, but I hope you will join us again next week on the way home.